Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
Welcome back to Hardball. The Florida contest for governor has become a marquee race this fall, pitting a progressive mayor against one of Donald Trump's biggest supporters. Congressman Ron DeSantis' victory in the Republican primary was helped in part by his multiple appearances on Fox News. According to Politico, DeSantis made 121 appearances on Fox and Fox Business. His campaign estimates it would have cost the campaign $9.3 million to purchase all of that airtime. His frequent appearances helped secure President Trump's endorsement. Let's take a look at a few of those.
We're in 2018 now, and we still don't have evidence of any Trump-Russia campaign collusion. This Russia collusion thing was infected by bias from the start. The legitimacy of this thing is gone.
Trump has almost the entire media against him. Fake news day after day after day. He's got the entire Democratic Party after him. He's got the lobbyists after him. He's got the bureaucracy after him. And he's got some Republicans who come after him to kneecap him. And so he is under an attack like no president has faced. And he is standing tall for us. He is working hard. So the last thing I want to do is go out there and lob hand grenades at the president. I think we need to support the president, understand what he's up against, and understand he's facing opposition unlike any other president we've seen.
What do you think the president has done for your campaign in this primary?
Well, obviously, he's the 800-pound gorilla in Republican politics.
All right, for more, I'm joined by our roundtable, Laura Bassett, a senior political reporter at Huffington Post, Basil Smikle, a Democratic strategist, and John Podhoretz, an editor at Commentary Magazine. John, we were talking at the top of the show about this Florida governor's race as sort of an illustration of where each party is in the Trump era, and this seems like a big part of it. You've got a congressman who a key part of his campaign strategy was get on Fox, and he got the president's attention, and it changed the race.
Think about DeSantis. DeSantis is a Harvard-Yale guy, okay? The Harvard-Yale guy, this is not a populist's resume, okay? If there's an indication that the party of Reagan has turned into the party of Trump, it is that DeSantis isn't walking around saying, well, it's a man who attended Harvard and Yale. He's like, defend Trump. The elites are going after him. He is the elites. He's a classic image of the elites, turning himself into a pretzel to become a Trumpian populist, and it worked.
Becoming the party of Trump. And then, Basil, in terms of the Democratic Party and how it responds to the phenomenon that John is describing there, the Trump phenomenon, I think we get a look at that in Florida a bit last night, too. I'm wondering if the circumstances that allow Gillum to win that nomination, come out of nowhere with no money and do that, could he have pulled that off just 3 years ago?
I'm not sure he could have pulled it off 3 years ago, but I think it started at least 3 years ago because he actually, and I met him when he was running for mayor of Tallahassee, and he really started to engage a lot of young voters, even back then, to try to sort of create this clearinghouse so people get trained to run and be involved in these campaigns. So this this effect, I think, is starting to come to fruition now, but it also speaks to the depth of our electorate. The fact that 600,000 more voters came out in our primary yesterday versus 4 years ago. Even after Bush Gore in 2000, it's 200,000 more than in the 2000 elections. So the depth of our electorate, I think, is something that's very, very striking.
It is Friday, the 31st of August, Labor Day weekend here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Fridays. That's right, folks. We are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. Wow. Wow. The Mueller investigation is illegal. Lester Holt, he continues to say, Lester Holt fudged. He fudged that tape. All right. And you know what that all is about. He's just setting it up for his deplorable base, who will believe anything, of course. To believe, oh yeah, all the tapes have been altered. And it will work because people in America are incapable, generally, not just Trump's deplorable base, but generally people in America can't remember what happened last week, let alone have an institutional memory of what is normal from even 3 years ago. So, Trump can get away with it. He can tell these whopping lies. The tapes prove otherwise, and he can just say, they were altered to make me say those things. I never said them. I'm too busy to monitor every tape that's been made of me to see how they've altered it. But as soon as he got off the golf course and was told that his numbers are dropping precipitously, and that Mueller is closing in, and this weekend there may be, lots coming down, because he is, he being Mueller, is ostensibly under a timeline for the midterms. I don't know. Maybe he should wait 5 days before the election and just say that they're opening up the investigation again because of some newfound evidence. Goose. Gander. Splat. Nah, Mueller won't do that. You know he won't. Okay, well, people's passports are being confiscated, regardless of what the State Department is saying. They're saying, oh no. The Washington Post story that I reported on yesterday, by the way, of Hispanic Americans born here having their passports confiscated and then transported to deportation facilities, and in some cases actually being deported. American citizens actually being deported. State Department denies that is happening. Of course, they also denied separating kids, babies, from their parents after they had bragged about it for weeks. Then they denied they ever did it. So, I'm telling you, Schumer making this this ridiculous compromise to fast-track 15 Federalist Society judges, by the way, because of maybe some sort of deal he's made with McConnell. Do you remember see, this is the problem. People can't remember what happened yesterday. Then remember institutional memory of what happened 3 years ago. Remember what happened to Obama every single time he compromised, even like put through a program that the Republicans had put through themselves. But as soon as a black guy did it, oh no, that was a bad thing. That was communism. That was Kenyan socialism. Every single time they kicked him in the teeth. He'd put his hand across the aisle, they'd kick him in the teeth. He'd bend over to help an old lady across the street, they'd kick him in the teeth. So Schumer, listen to me, buddy. This is why you may be out and out yourself. Because the people who are willing to kick him back in the teeth are getting voted in. And people are going to go to jail that have perpetuated this evil, killing babies in baby gulags, confiscating passports of U.S. citizens and deporting them. Oh, yeah, I know. A midwife fudged 2 births in a border town across the river. And all the thousands of births that she gave are all suspect, apparently. Of course, in 2009, there was a settlement about this midwifery scandal, if you want to call it that. But that doesn't matter, This is exactly how Nazi Germany rose. They used existing law to weasel their way in. And that's what they are, they're little weasels. But we know Republicans, with the help of some hostile foreign power, I mean, the hostile foreign power doesn't know the nuance that the Republicans know. They know how they're masters in being able to gum up the system through the bureaucracy. Oh, we have to close down these polling places in a black district because the bathroom entrance is not ADA compliant. Yeah, but they didn't bother to find polling places that would, or a place that could be a polling place that was ADA compliant. Just shut down the 7 of the 9. I mean, that guy did get fired, but they know how to. You know, the French call it Plan D. You know, it's how you maneuver through the labyrinth of the bureaucracy, and how you can bore right through it rather than going the circuitous route that is set up for you. Plan D. You're able to maneuver through there and get what you want. But usually what that is like the little guy being able to do that. What the Republicans have done in our form of government, of course, as we've seen over all these many decades, those of you who are of these many decades, is they've made it a fine art and a science in which to find obscure laws to further their agenda. And it's usually one that they can use to own the liberals. Right? I mean, come on, Romney Care became Obamacare, same program, right down to the individual mandate. That the fiscal conservative right wing said that people have to have skin in the game. They have to have skin in the game. It was their thing because people have to suffer if they're getting something. The individual mandate was about suffering. And then the Democrats said, okay, we'll let you make us suffer. And then they accuse us of being the sadists. Look at that sadistic Democratic Party. They're socialists, right? Isn't that how it works? Okay, folks, I assure you I have not been hitting the French 77s yet, but I will in time today because it is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. And what is coming up on the rest of the menu? I better get it on because time's a-flying. Oh, my gosh, I got to get through the show today in time. All right, on the rest of the menu, of course, at the top, there was Press the Flesh, or whatever it is. Press the Meat, that's it. Press the Meat. Opining about Ron DeSantis, who, look, got a lot of money, or free advertising from Fox News. I mean, he's the Fox candidate. And he was put on Fox specifically to audition for one Donald J. Trump. And he was successful at his end of it. Mm-hmm. On the rest of the menu in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, an Oregon construction worker was fired from a private company for refusing to attend mandatory Bible study. He's not really a Christian, so, but you have to be if you want a job with that company, against the law, of course. Gun sellers whine that sales of AR-15s continue to collapse since Obama left office. They just can't find a boogeyman scary enough to get people to go out and buy those guns. Well, if they were smart, they'd maybe turn their sights on the current occupant. Nah. And Baton Rouge police pulled a fake Antifa list from a neo-Nazi hate site and used it to target random people who signed an anti-Trump petition. Kind of makes you wonder how many neo-Nazi haters are in the Baton Rouge Police Department, if you ask me. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where the Ivanka Trump-endorsed family leave plan is a scam to undermine Social Security. Oh, she's so pretty. And the National Enquirer scandal substantiates 2 key parts of the Steele Dossier. And we're not talking about hookers peeing on Obama's bed, okay? That's not one of the 2. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right-ish of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Check it out. Kelly is still in need of some funds to finish off her hardware and software update and improvement. So if you could scoot some money her way, that would be great. And speaking of money being scooted, to the leftish of the chat room link are our contribute donate buttons at Netroots Radio. And we are unable to do this without you, so thank you for your generosity and keeping Resistance Radio beaming 24/7, 365. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. We are also on Facebook, and that Facebook Live thing is getting popular. Not that I'm on it, but just, good. Thank you, Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary at Daily Codes, where I can be found as Justice Putnam. Follow the show on Facebook, and you can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. Just start typing in West Coast Cookbook, and it'll prompt you with at Cookbook West. You can get podcasts of the show by way of Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, YouTube, etc., 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 etc. All right. Well, first offering here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, comes by way of the Oregonian by, there you are, Amy Green. A 34-year-old man has filed an $800,000 lawsuit against an Albany construction company, Albany, Oregon, by the way, claiming the owner fired him after he refused to attend weekly Bible study. In one of my many forays into my many jobs, because I did that, I worked for a construction crew here in Oregon, by the way, when I was just a young guy, starting out, 19, 20 years old, didn't know anything. Well, I knew little. And it was with, I know they don't like being called Mormons anymore, or Latter-day Saints. They don't like being called that anymore. But at the time, it was a crew of Mormons. And, so they didn't drink coffee. They drank, I got to tell you, they sucked down the tab. I don't know what it was about Tab. I mean, there's caffeine in it, but I guess it was owned by the Coca-Cola company, and the church had a large investment in Coca-Cola, apparently. But they could drink the Tab. And but I have to say, it was a tough crew. I mean, some of the most foul-mouthed invectives. I heard curse words I'd never heard before. And they were very practiced and observant Mormons, too, at the same time. So I just figured, I guess they express themselves in a certain way. But all that said, I never felt forced to look at things their way. All right, other than the fact that I was kind of a hippie and they weren't, and so there were certain things about that I attributed to, that they're like squares. and it had nothing to do with their religion. But I never felt like I had to go to the tabernacle so that I could nail off chipboard, for subflooring. Why they use chipboard? I guess they were trying to cut costs, huh? All right, so this fellow actually, long story short, is that he had been incarcerated, and there are various companies that transition those types back into society. Isn't that neat? But no one does it for free. Okay, they all get a stipend to do it. And one of the most pervasive, and I would consider to be quite evil, endeavors in this business are the mandatory Christianism, which you get in prison also. Everybody has a prison chaplain. I don't know about very many prison rabbis. I know they have them, but you don't hear about them too much. But you do hear about the prison chaplain because everybody's going to be forgiven. Everybody. Just you wait. And now when you get out of prison or jail for any reason, you go through these transition phases and you got to get a job, and these people help you go through it. But it's very similar to, the missions that take care of the poor. Before the meal, you get a sermon. And this guy got too many sermons. He's Native American, and he doesn't practice that kind of religiosity. And he got fed up, and he told his boss, I can't go to these studies anymore. The boss told him he was fired, and now he's filing suit for $800,000. And it looks like the law is on his side. I wanted to mention one thing very quickly about the confiscation of passports, ostensibly only along the border. But this has been shown, especially with brown people, to be a pervasive problem, not just in border states or Texas specifically. But let's talk about Texas specifically. The confiscation of one's identification papers also prevents those American citizens from being able to vote. And the papers that are being confiscated are actually the ones that people need to be able to vote. You can't just go in there with a student ID or a driver's license. You need much more, especially if you're brown and or black. And that is where another travesty of this scandal is leading. They only know how to cheat, right? They only know how to cheat. All right, so next offering here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is by the great T-Bog out of Raw Story. According to a Wall Street Journal report, sales of our AR-15s, often described as assault weapons, have declined at gun shows since President Barack Obama left office, with some in the industry calling it the Trump slump. Gun sellers are seeing the downside to having a pro-gun president in Donald Trump, which has lessened the anxiety of gun owners who felt they had to snatch up as many weapons as possible under the previous president. According to industry figures, sales of AR-15 style rifles manufactured by Smith & Wesson's parent company American Outdoor Brands Corp. has fallen 50%, down to $90 million for the year ending April 30th, compared with the previous fiscal year. Manufacturer Strom, Ruger & Company is reporting a 13.5%, that's 13.5% drop in overall net sales for the first 6 months of the year. But they don't break down the loss by gun category. Well, according to Mark Eliason, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Maine gun maker Wyndham Weaponry, sales have normalized because you don't have the fear-based market. You know, it's really hard to instill fear in rational thinkers, isn't it? We aren't as prone to snatch up as many weapons because we think some amorphous entity from a made-up area in the world is coming to take us over. All right. Oh, you're saying that we're just falling prey to the Russia hoax? I don't think so. You know, critical thinkers are able to see through whether an actual counterintelligence investigation that's been going on, let's be clear, for at least a couple of decades on this guy, Donald Trump. All right. But what's been going on, recently in the last 3 or 4 years, yeah, it's been ramped up. But we can determine what is and isn't. So we're not really prone to go buy guns to protect us from our government. We are the government. The Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is an article out of Raw Story by Noor Al-Sabai. I'm always, humored when somebody like Donald Trump calls Antifa, they're really violent, I guess. But, Antifa hasn't blown up any federal buildings with little babies inside. Antifa hasn't killed armored car or armored truck guards, stealing their money and to fund their war. That's the purview of right-wing militias. Domestic terrorists. Antifa are anti-fascists, but somehow they're the bad people. And when the Baton Rouge police get sucked into perusing Stormfront? Makes you wonder how many neo-Nazis are in the Baton Rouge Police Department now, doesn't it? Yeah, Stormfront doxed a bunch of people who signed an anti-Trump petition, called them Antifa, anti-fascists, and the Baton Rouge police started rounding them up. Well, what's that old adage? A little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. All right, we better get to our break because time's a-flying, as we say, and we got to get those French 77s mixed up for you for the chef's table. So we're going to do that. We'll go to our break. When we come back, we'll go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Nemhauser, filling in for your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. As the U.S. population ages, more people are at risk for injuries. The largest percentage of injury-related deaths among this group are caused by falls. Elizabeth Burns is with CDC's National Center for Injury Prevention and Control. She's joining us today to discuss ways to prevent injuries and deaths from falls among senior adults. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Thanks for having me.
Elizabeth, what are some of the more common consequences when a senior adult falls?
Well, first, it's important to note that falls are incredibly common. More than 1 in 4 older adults will fall in a given year. Common consequences include loss of independence and an increased fear of falling, as older adults are afraid to do the same kinds of activities they were doing before. And this can actually lead to more falls, as older adults have less strength in their lower body. Common consequences include hip fracture and traumatic brain injury. And ultimately, in 2016, almost 30,000 older adults died because of a fall.
So are falls more common in men or in women?
Falls are more common in women, and more women go to the emergency department because of a fall, and more women die because of a fall. However, the rate of fall deaths are more common in men than women. What this means is that out of 100,000 men, more will die from a fall than out of 100,000 women.
What are common causes of falls among older people?
Getting on and off the toilet and getting in and out of bed are common causes of falls. Walking around the hallways at night when the lights are off is a common way people fall. There's also an increased amount of medications used in seniors, which have side effects like making them lightheaded, and that increases the risk of falls and is a common cause.
With all of those factors, what are some ways our listeners can decrease their chances of falling?
Older adults should talk to their healthcare provider or doctor about how they can decrease their chances of falling. This can be done during the annual wellness visit or during annual physicals. The doctor will recommend an exercise program that should increase strength and balance, or maybe refer you to a physical therapist. Additionally, they can look through your medications and perhaps reduce your doses or suggest medications that decrease your chances of falls.
Are there things we can do to modify our homes to prevent falling?
Oh, absolutely. Installing grab bars on the side of the toilet, making sure that rugs are taped down or removed, making sure that there's lighting in the hallways are all really simple ways that an older adult can modify their home to prevent falls.
Where can listeners go to get more information about preventing falls?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/study, and that's spelled STEADI.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I've been talking today with Elizabeth Burns about ways to prevent fall-related injuries and deaths among senior adults. Improving strength and agility through regular exercise and removing potential obstacles in the home can help decrease the risk for falls. If you or a loved one is older and struggle with mobility, talk with a healthcare provider about ways to decrease the risks for fall-related injuries and death. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Jeffrey Nemhauser for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. In the more than 150 years of European settlement of the British North American colonies, by 1776, Americans had developed many different ways of organizing local governments. For example, in Virginia, the House of Burgesses was composed of representatives elected by the Virginia colonists. The oldest representative assembly in the colonies, the House of Burgesses, had its origins in 1619. Only men who owned land could serve in the House of Burgesses. Each county in Virginia had 2 representatives. The House of Burgesses created legislation and addressed the concerns of the people. Virginia also had a governor appointed by the king and an appointed council of state, which had veto over any legislation. The other colonies had their own representative assemblies, and Americans gained experience with self-government before the Revolution. In the colonies, free white men could serve on juries, attend town meetings, and vote in local elections. With few exceptions, however, women, African Americans, Native Americans, and white men who did not own property were not allowed to vote. Despite this, more Americans participated in self-government than did people almost anywhere else in the world. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
In the new book, Insane, America's Criminal Treatment of Mental Illness, the author, Alyssa Roth, makes the point that the country's largest mental health providers are neither hospitals nor clinics, but rather prisons and jails. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Prisons and jails, where the mentally ill are warehoused, locked up without access to proper treatment, and abused and punished in ways that make their sickness worse, sometimes much worse. Think solitary confinement, which Amnesty International defines as torture. Of course, having a mental illness in no way predicts that a person will end up in the criminal justice system. That's just plain wrong. But a person who ends up in the criminal justice system may well have a mental illness or drug dependency. Indeed, 20, 30, 40, sometimes even 50% of the men or women locked up in a so-called correctional facility suffer from a mental illness. Roth's book does offer a sliver of hope by chronicling criminal justice mental health diversion programs. Those diversion programs work. They dramatically reduce homelessness and ER visits and police costs and the number of needed jail beds. But these programs are few and far between, which leads Roth to conclude that, quote, we not only are failing the people behind the razor wire and their families, but failing ourselves as well. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
In a new Washington Post ABC poll released Friday morning, 60% of Americans disapprove of Trump, while majorities back Mueller's probe and think Sessions shouldn't be fired.
National polling released just moments ago shows disapproval of President Trump's job performance has reached a new high. The ABC News Washington Post poll found just 36% of Americans approved of the president's job performance, with 60% disapproving. Meanwhile, 63% of Americans support Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation of Trump and his associates, and only 29% oppose that investigation. The poll also asks about the allegation that President Trump directed Michael Cohen to pay off women. If true, 6 in 10 of those polled say Trump committed a crime. Asked if President Trump tried to interfere with the Mueller probe in a way that obstructed justice, 53% say he has obstructed, 35% say he did not. And on the president's convicted former campaign chief, a mere 18% think Trump should pardon Paul Manafort. 66% of Americans polled say he should not. Phil Rucker, these polls come from your newspaper. What jumps out at you this morning?
Well, what jumps out is there's a clear majority of Americans who are guarding against President Trump's efforts to influence the Mueller investigation, to perhaps get rid of Jeff Sessions, to show his influence in the Department of Justice. Again and again and again, they're disagreeing with the president. The president has spent all summer trying to discredit Bob Mueller with the tweet storm, with the public relations campaign by Rudy Giuliani, his lawyer, and yet almost two-thirds of the American people support the Mueller investigation. The president is thinking about getting rid of Jeff Sessions as the attorney general. Almost two-thirds of the American people think he should not fire Jeff Sessions, and almost half of the American people, 49%, think Congress should begin impeachment proceedings against President Trump. That's a pretty striking number to us.
Trump held another campaign rally Thursday night, this one in Indiana.
And they want to raid Medicare to pay for socialism. Somehow I don't see Indiana being the next Venezuela. I just don't see it.
He again railed against the press, falsely claiming that TV news crews turn off their cameras when he attacks the media. Trump singled out the New York Times, CNN, and NBC specifically, a continuation of his earlier tweet storm in which he claimed NBC anchor Lester Holt doctored the tape of him admitting that he fired former FBI Director James Comey because of the Russia probe. Trump did sit for an interview with Bloomberg News on Thursday. Margaret Tlaib spoke with CNN.
All right, you also asked the president point blank, did he think he messed up on how we handled the passing of Senator John McCain? What did he say about that?
He said no. I asked him, do you think you screwed it up? You could have united the country. And he said, no, I don't. He said, I did everything they asked me to. And he said that he respected Senator McCain's contributions to the country. But he also went on to talk on his own terms about how deeply they disagreed on so many issues. He made pretty clear their policy and personal animus. And we asked him whether he thought John McCain would have been a better president than Barack Obama. Notably, he declined to answer the question.
Bloomberg's editor-in-chief, John Micklethwaite, said that Sessions remains in trouble.
Judging from the reaction on Twitter, the big thing people are talking about is what he said about Jeff Sessions and the fact that he's safe till November, but that you said in the interview he didn't comment beyond that. What was he like when he did not comment? What vibe did you get from there about what he's thinking of?
I asked how many days after then, and he ignored the question. But I think I don't think it's just Trump. I think there's a general noise out of the White House at the moment that Sessions is okay through to there. What Trump then went on quite a lot about was the idea that he wanted Sessions to be looking at other things, especially to do with the Democrats and not just him. And at the end, he returned to the idea that he thinks it's impossible to impeach a successful president.
The California man was arrested after making more than a dozen calls to the Boston Globe newspaper, threatening to kill its employees and calling them the enemy of the people. The FBI detained Robert Chain in connection with calls he allegedly made earlier this month after the Globe announced it was spearheading a pushback against political attacks on the media. As America celebrates Labor Day, the president scrapped pay raises for nearly 2 million federal employees on Thursday, citing the need for fiscal sustainability. John McCain's body was flown to D.C. Thursday, where he will lie in state at the Capitol Rotunda, following a memorial service in Phoenix. Former Vice President Joe Biden delivered a eulogy.
My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democrat. And I love John McCain. I have had the dubious honor over the years of giving some eulogies for fine women and men that I've admired. But, Lindsay, this one's hard.
I got the news. And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. This broadcast is on holiday, but instead of running repeats until September 10th, we've asked foreign policy experts what they'll be paying attention to in the weeks to come. Stephen Ezel is the vice president of the Internet Technology and Innovation Foundation, which has now identified 34 countries that effectively lock data within their borders, in some cases making it difficult for digital firms to perform simple operations at the core of their business.
The ability to move data seamlessly across borders and extract actionable value and insight in real time from that data is an increasingly essential component of the global innovation economy. A recent study out of Finland found that fully half of all value generated in the global economy over the next 10 years will be created digitally. And so from our perspective, these types of policies really impugn and impinge the ability of enterprises to serve global marketplaces. And for countries that do put in place these types of policies, often out of the interest of trying to shelter local competitors from international competition and see the development of their own local data centers, ends up only raising the cost of cloud-based services or data analytic services for companies in their own economy.
One of the worst offenders when it comes to erecting barriers to digital trade, Ezel says, is China.
If we were to come to a negotiated settlement with our trade differences with China, I would suspect that opening channels for digital trade would be a key aspect of it. And if we were able to make it quite clear with the lead perpetrator of these types of policies that they are unacceptable, then maybe we would see movement from other countries who would not be so ready to emulate China's bad practices.
Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. Yes, the French 77s have been mixed to perfection. They are quite tasty. I said that we may be drinking more than 2, but don't. Please don't. You will be falling over. And we don't want that, okay? No third-party liability. We don't want that, all right? We need to take care of ourselves and each other, and we will. But in the meantime, sit down, relax. You're not going anywhere for a little while at least. What is left of a little while? Oh, yeah. Hey, well, it is Labor Day weekend, and I've got my grandkids, all 3 of them, coming to visit for the weekend. That will be grand. I also, another little tidbit of news, broke down and got a beater truck, a 95 Dodge Dakota. Not too bad. I mean, it's in fairly good shape. Not the best shape. It might need a few things. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I always like the suspension to be a little bit beefier than what people normally have their suspensions at. So that's one of the things I look at. Engine was really clean. I mean, the guy did a really good job steam cleaning that engine, and, you know, you see what you need. And it was supposed to be getting a starter, ignition. Something had to be done with the exhaust. It had a little bit of a hiss. Don't like that. So that was being taken care of, and that is ostensibly to be delivered here, where the mothership is located here in Rogue River today. So I can put that to use. It's such a drag getting things for the grounds and trying to fit it in the Dodge Dart. I would get redwood bark for all the planting beds, which there are a lot. And I would make trip after trip after trip, because I could only get like 6 bags or so. Well, how was it? I probably got, you know what? That's what it was. I got about 10 bags between the back seat and the trunk of the car. And I still would have to make, oh boy, 5-6 trips. That's a lot. So the beater truck will be used for getting to the lumber yard and that kind of thing. Maybe to the dump. We'll see. But that will be fun. Okay. Weather from around the world always begins along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 61 degrees. We will be, it says much warmer, but it seems to me we're going to be about the same as we were yesterday, which was around 82, 83 degrees. Which is what we are slated for today. Overnight low will be in the upper 50s, low 60s, so I think it will be more in the low 60s. Winds right now are out of the southwest, just barely a tick above 1 mile per hour. Will be increasing to 5 to 10 miles per hour, as is usual in a couple of hours, but will have shifted out of the northwest, will then shift again out of the north-northwest for tonight, continuing its 5 to 10 mile per hour clip until tomorrow, where it will also continue out of its north-northwest direction. Dry conditions will continue, though there is a 10% chance of precipitation, and that will continue throughout the weekend. There is in the area an active air quality alert, and that is because the winds could shift, and there is a fire not terribly far away that smoke could blow in, though right now the air quality index is at 32, which is good. Not quite healthy, but good. So we're in the green. Ragweed pollen is now permeating throughout the region, and that is low. So if you have problems with ragweed pollen, it's low. The daytime UV index is considered high, where it had been very high for months. But now it's only high, but it is still at 7, so take care. Low pressure is now creeping into the system, into the area, and breaking down the high pressure system. So we'll see how that goes. Right now, pressure is holding steady at 30.04 inches. Visibility is down to 7 miles. We are mostly cloudy right now, though that should clear off and we should have sunny day with only partial clouds. And that relative humidity right now is at 67%. Okay, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchase. These people plan to purchase personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. All right, London is 70 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 72 and partly cloudy. Rome is 80 degrees and partly cloudy with a heat advisory because it will be getting even hotter than that 80 degrees. Though, once it gets to 85, that's when the electric grid sometimes clicks off there. I know. I've been there. Oh, but you can still get an espresso. So many of them are just done by pressure. And they've already heated up the machine. So you can still get an espresso for a while, even without electricity. Kiev is 77 and fair. Kabul is 79 degrees and fair. And I should warn you, please, no wedding parties this weekend. You'll live longer. Hong Kong is 78 degrees with a rain shower. Tokyo is 79 degrees and partly cloudy, and they have a heat advisory too because they're slated to go into the 90s. Wow. Sydney, Australia is 56 and clear. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and partly cloudy, and they have a fog advisory. And New York is 74 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. How cool can you get in the end of summer? And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. First offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays is by the editorial staff at Common Dreams. A Trump administration-approved paid family leave plan is actually an attack on Social Security, argues a new study by the Urban Institute, and one that is intent on promoting the falsehood that the U.S. cannot afford to provide paid leave to new parents while also ensuring that retirees are provided for financially. Marco Rubio's Economic Security for New Parents Act would give employees who need time off to take care of their families 8 to 12 weeks of so-called paid leave, but the workers themselves would actually be forced to pay for those weeks themselves by dipping into their Social Security accounts, threatening their own stability decades down the road during retirement. Feature, not a bug, in this reporter's opinion. The Urban Institute offers the first in-depth analysis on the effects of the plan, which was first proposed last winter and which contrasts sharply with Democratic plans to fund paid family leave through payroll taxes that all businesses and employees would pay. Okay? Pay now or you pay later. Pay now. Rubio's plan, the study found, would cut retiree Social Security by 3 to 10% over the course of their later years, not just because they would not be able to collect benefits until 8 to 12 weeks after they reach retirement age, but also because anyone who takes advantage of the family leave would have to pay the money back with interest upon retirement. Notice how they take money from you with no interest, but if you get a little bit from them, you're paying it back with interest because, hey, there's already a concern about retirement security and income, and people are increasingly entering retirement with mortgages and other kinds of debt. And that was Richard Johnson, a co-author of the report. The idea we would reduce those retirement incomes further is scary. Feature, not a bug. The plan is endorsed by White House senior advisor Ivanka Trump because she did so well with her jewelry business, who entered the administration promising to make paid family leave and other issues affecting American women a top priority. But critics have denounced the plan as part of the mounting evidence that the president's daughter has no intent on pushing for legislation that helps women and families. It is a highly individualized way of dealing with the facts of family life, which by their nature are communal issues. Babies and children need caregivers. Mothers and fathers need time and money to give care. Elderly grandparents and great-grandparents need companionship and assistance. And that was Elizabeth Bruning in the Washington Post earlier this year. There is a place for every stage of the life cycle in the grand order of things, and a just state would ideally defer to that natural rhythm. The plan, based on a proposal by the right-wing Independent Women's Forum, is aimed at reframing how Americans view Social Security, turning it from an earned benefit that all taxpayers pay into and will receive when they need it for retirement or in case of injury, into a savings account that American families will be penalized for if they begin to raise a family.
Danser maintenant sous l'été, les pieds nus dans le sable. Danser maintenant et jeter vos ennuis dans les vagues qui dansent.
Martin Sismar of Raw Story brings us this last offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Ever since the release of the bombshell Steele Dossier, reporters have been working to sort out how much of it is true. The document alleges that Donald Trump was blackmailed into becoming close with Russian dictator Vladimir Putin and ultimately accepted election help from a hostile foreign power. We now know that Trump was very much susceptible to blackmail, whether by the Russians or someone else. Blackmail is at the center of the Steele Dossier, Chris Hayes said in his show with his panel. Hayes then pointed to the New York Times reports on Trump's relations with National Enquirer publisher David E. Pecca. The idea of that is not all far-fetched. In fact, it already exists. Now, Natasha Bertrand of The Atlantic agreed Trump was very much susceptible to blackmail. This is potentially the most blackmailable president in the United States history, she said. The fact that the National Enquirer had decades of information about his affairs, his children, about even Melania, speaks volumes about the president's life and all of the shady things he did throughout his career. Many of which, most of which, perhaps all of which, he never faced real consequences for. Bertrand said that what we now know about the relationships between Pecker and Trump substantiate two key parts of the dossier. This substantiates two big claims in the dossier, she said. The first, of course, is that Cohen was Trump's fixer in all things related to Russia, just as he was the fixer in relation to burying stories about Trump's extramarital affairs. He was also, according to the dossier, his fixer in burying the story of the Trump campaign's conspiracy with Russia to win the election. He was alleged to have paid off the hackers and to have cleaned the whole thing up after the election. The second part, Trump's reluctance to discuss his alleged sexual activities following his marriage to Melania. Well, Trump was a little bit more skittish about those extramarital affairs becoming public than a lot of us have been led to believe. All right. So now we know that Trump has gone to great lengths to hide these details of his personal life, and it really makes you wonder that if those salacious details of that dossier are true, what lengths has Trump gone to keep the Russians from exposing them? Indeed. All right, it's Labor Day weekend, but we will be back here on Monday for River City Hash Monday. So stay tuned to News Radio throughout the day, throughout the weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks, because it's breaking right now. And we will visit with you on Monday in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.